Let's go.
Power at 1%.
Oh, great.
Power at 400% capacity.
How about that?
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the Starkside. While you're here, please support the channel by hitting the like button. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe as well as the notification bell. Today we'll be talking about the Marvel Legends Infinity Saga Avengers Endgame Thanos Iron Man 2 packs, Iron Man Mark 85. You might be wondering why I don't have the packaging here, so I got this figure from an online toy store called My Plastic Party. You can check them out on the link in the description below. This store gives us an option to buy either one of the two figures from this 2-pack. For me, I opted to go for just the Iron Man figure because I've been wanting a proper Robert Downey Jr. Tony Stark head for a very long time. Now before we talk about the figure itself, let's take a closer look at the accessories. So Iron Man comes with a lot of accessories. Besides 3 head sculpt options, he also comes with 3 pairs of alternate hands, 2 repulsor blast effects, 1 nanotech energy blade, and 1 energy shield. Looking at these fisted hands, they're just reused from the original Endgame Wave Iron Man Mark 85, just repainted differently. The red here is a little lighter than what we've got before. As always, the sculpt here is very nice. The same goes for his open repulsor hands, nice sculpt and paint apps as well. And we have this new left grabbing hand for Iron Man, nice red paint. Nice gunmetal gray here as well, I like that. This hand is actually for his nanotech energy blade accessory, but we'll get to that later. Looking at this snap hand, this is sculpted nicely. The snapping post looks very good. The Infinity Stones are painted correctly, that's great, I love that. I do wish they used glossier paint, but it's alright. This makes me very excited to take photos of his snap moment from Endgame. Switching up the hands is very easy as well. Just pop this off and port in the other one. Looking at the repulsor blast effects, these are just the same effects that come with almost every Iron Man figure. The only difference is the shade of blue that they used here. This looks very good. You can also disassemble them into 2, like so. So this allows for some more display options, whatever you want. Porting them in is also very easy. You can use it on both his feet and hands. We also get this new accessory, his nanotech energy blade. I don't think we got this before. Nice sculpt here. Very good paint apps. I love the translucent blue that they used here. It's similar with the repulsor effects. Yeah, this looks very smooth and sleek. I love that. Making him hold it is fairly easy as well, though you do have to pull apart the fingers a little bit to make some room. And wow, yeah, that looks very awesome. He also comes with this energy shield. This actually has the same sculpt as the nanotech shield that came with the previous Marvel Studios The First 10 Years 2-pack Iron Man Mark 50. I always thought that this sculpt is not film accurate and it also doesn't have the proper scale. I think it should be twice its size, like so. But setting those aside, I love the translucent blue that we're getting here. It's similar to the effects that we've seen earlier. And depending on the photos you take, the size of this shield should be enough, I guess. This looks very sleek. It's a bummer it isn't as big as it should be. It also has this holder at the back for his hands or arms. You can make him hold it like this or this. And if you have the 2-pack Iron Man Mark 50, you can also use the nanotech accessories from there as well. The red is a little different, but depending on the lighting, you can use it for some photo ops as well. And you can also use this launcher weapon that came with the old Iron Man Mark 3 figure from the Iron Man movie line. The red is also a little different, but the launcher still works. Ow! Taking a closer look at the figure itself, I love this figure so much. Most of it though is just the same and reused from the previous Endgame Iron Man Mark 85, but I love the little improvements and additions they made. Starting off with the head sculpts, I love the gold paint here on his helmet. Compared to the previous Mark 85, I think this one looks shinier, more authentic, and more metallic looking. They also added some more paint apps here to make it more film accurate. Nice gunmetal gray there. Nice red paint as well. It's a little lighter than what we got from the previous figure. I actually prefer the red on this previous Mark 85 a bit more, but this isn't so bad. I still think it's a decent shade of red. I do wish they added some blue to his eyes to make it more realistic. And switching it up with the other head sculpt options is fairly easy. Unlike previous Marvel Legends figures, the neck is removable here as well. I think the only other figure that also has this feature is the new WandaVision Scarlet Witch. And wow! I love this head sculpt so much! Hasbro really nailed it with this one. It's like I'm actually looking at Robert Downey Jr. The Bruce paint apps here look very good. You can use his head sculpt for some cool battle action set pieces. Very good. I did hear others say that this head sculpt looks a little on the big side. I think though that if you look at this figure just on its own, without any other figures beside it, I think the size is just right. But when you start to place some other figures beside him, this Tony Stark head looks a little bit bigger. But I love it. There's also a third head sculpt option, another Tony Stark head but without the injuries and bruises. Wow, this looks very beautiful. This is art. Looking at the rest of the figure, I love the added paint apps and subtle details they incorporated here. Most of the body was reused from the previous Mark 85. I do think that they retooled this upper torso. If you can see, there's a slight difference in the shape of the arc reactor here as compared to the previous Mark 85 figure. There are also some other small differences in the sculpt. I am glad that they also added this blue hue to the arc reactor on this new one. That's great, I love that. For the previous Mark 85 figure, I printed a small arc reactor clipping and put it there because it was annoying that it was just plain white at the time. They also painted the small arc reactors here and there. That's cool. Yeah, very nice. However, here in the lower torso, I do wish they retained the paint here in the lining. The arms here look very good. Nice gunmetal gray. Love the gold. There's a little bit of paint chipping here though, but when that happens on an Iron Man figure, I just assume it's a bit battle worn. Looking at the back of the figure, I love the added paint apps here, especially here. Yeah, the details are much more obvious in this new figure because of this new paint apps. Hasbro doesn't really spend much time adding and painting the details on the back of their figures, but I think they went above and beyond for this Iron Man. Looking at the legs, like I said earlier, the gold here on this figure looks more metallic. Yeah, very nice gunmetal gray here. This makes the muscle shape concept of this armor more obvious. This is consistent with the rest of the figure, so the paint apps here are much more film accurate. Something I noticed with the sculpt of the legs on my previous Iron Man figure, the right leg here is a bit warped, so it makes me happy that this new Iron Man figure doesn't have that issue. Another thing to note, since most of the parts were reused, I don't expect pinless technology for his elbow and knee joints as well. Let's go over the articulation. Iron Man can look up very far, that looks good, and he can look down as well. There's a little gap at the back though, but it's not enough to bother me. His head can rotate. There's some forward-backward shifting motion here as well. He also has this nice neck pivot. Yeah, that looks very good. His arms can bend upward very far, just a little over the 90-degree mark. That looks good. He can bend them all the way as well. Not sure if they did this on purpose, but you can actually straighten out his arms properly compared to the previous Iron Man figure. His shoulders can rotate 360. He has bicep swivel, double jointed elbows. His wrists can rotate and move up and down. This same wrist movement can also be observed using his other alternate hands. He has this diaphragm pivot that allows him to bend forward that far and backward as well. That looks good. No waist swivel though. His legs can move upward only that far and not so much backward. His hips can move outward very far. Yeah, that looks great. He has a thigh swivel, double jointed knees. His ankles do move up a little and down as well. And he also has ankle pivot. However, on my Iron Man figure, the ankle joint on his left foot is actually stuck and quite stiff. I already tried using hot water and the hair dryer technique to try and soften the plastic, but it still won't budge. I don't want to try and force it even more because it might break the peg, but if you guys have any suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. Another thing that I want to share is that I'm not actually a big fan of the thigh cut when it comes to Iron Man figures. There actually comes a time in which the peg connecting the thigh to this leg gets broken. This actually happened to me twice. Once on my Iron Man Mark 50 figure and the second time on the previous Mark 85 figure. It could be because of the tropical weather here or the fact that the plastic completely encloses the peg a little too much. I had to use super glue to stick them back together, but going forward, you really can't rotate it anymore. I wish Hasbro went a different direction when it came to this articulation for Iron Man figures. In particular, I wish they used some sort of ball and socket joint articulation like what they did with the Marvel Studios the first 10 years, Iron Man Mark 7. This kind of articulation actually provides much more room for movement and doesn't really restrict the peg, which could avoid some breaking issues. Now for some figure comparisons, I'm going to compare this new Mark 85 Iron Man armor with all the other Iron Man armor figures that I currently have. Here we have the Mark 85 armor next to the Iron Man armor Mark 1 from the Iron Man movie line from Hasbro. They actually re-released this Mark 1 armor for the Marvel Studios the first 10 years line, but with better paint apps. However, Hasbro needs to release this one again with proper scale and size. The gap between his legs does not look realistic at all. But yeah, seeing Tony's first armor and his final armor side by side does bring a lot of nostalgic feels. And here's the Mark 85 armor next to the Mark 3 from the same Iron Man movie line. I don't have the new Mark 3 from the Infinity Saga line yet, but I'm hoping to get that soon and do a review on it as well. And if you want to try a Tony Stark head sculpt, it doesn't really work that well. It doesn't even port in properly. And here's the Mark 85 armor next to the 2018 Marvel Studios the first 10 years Iron Man Mark 7 from the first Avengers movie. I think the scale here looks just right. I expect the sleeker nanotech Mark 85 to be slightly shorter and smaller looking than the previous bulky armors. I do like the red more on this Mark 7 armor. And trying on a Tony Stark head, it doesn't look that good. The neck looks a little too long. And here's the Mark 85 armor next to the 2015 Marvel Legends Infinite Series Marvel Now Iron Man with the black and gold color scheme. I treat this one as my temporary Mark 20. I expect Hasbro would be releasing a Mark 20 in the future as well. Iron Man armors are actually quite the money spinner when it comes to MCU toys. And trying on a Tony Stark head, yeah, that looks very big and the neck feels a little loose as well. And here's the Mark 85 next to some other Iron Man armors. We have the 2016 Marvel Legends Captain America Civil War 2-pack Mark 27 Disco armor from Iron Man 3 and the 2013 Marvel Legends Groot Wave Iron Man. This second one is an armor from the comics, also known as the Space Armor Mark 3. And yeah, the heights line up pretty well. And if you want to try the Tony Stark head sculpts, it doesn't really look nice on the Mark 27. The ball peg on the neck is a little too high. But I think it looks kinda nice on the space armor. And here's the Mark 85 armor next to the Gamerverse Avengers Game Atmosphere armor and Star Boost armor. Since there are currently no Marvel Legends MCU figures yet for the Mark 30 Blue Steel and the Mark 39 Star Boost armors, these two serve as my temporary figures for them. And I think the Mark 85 armor scales up pretty well. And if you want to try the Tony Stark heads, yep, it doesn't look very good. And here's the Mark 85 next to the Mark 42 armor from the Iron Man 3 Movie Wave figures from Hasbro and the Mark 43 from the Avengers Age of Ultron Wave. I've always thought that these two look a bit anorexic and could be bulkier. And that's why I expect the Tony Stark heads to look very big on this too. And here's Mark 85 next to the Gamerverse Iron Man armor and the Civil War Iron Man Mark 46. I am using this Gamerverse figure as my temporary Mark 45. And I think the heights line up pretty well here. And like with the previous Gamerverse Iron Man figures, the Tony Stark head sculpt doesn't work really well on this. But for the Mark 46, I think it could work. There are some angles where the neck looks a little too long, but there are also times where it looks good. And here's the Mark 85 armor next to the Iron Man Mark 49 rescue armor for Pepper Potts. And yeah, I think the scale here is spot on. It feels very good seeing these two together side by side. And here's the Mark 85 armor next to the Infinity War Thanos Wave Mark 50. This one I actually had someone else customize it to improve the paint apps, but over time it degraded. But I think it worked out well. I treat it as a battle-worn Mark 50. And yeah, I think the battle-worn Tony Stark head works perfectly on this figure. And here's the new Mark 85 armor next to the previous Mark 85. As you can see, most of it was reused. And you really can't use the new Tony Stark head sculpts here because the neck joints are very different. And here's the Mark 85 next to some other Endgame characters. We have the Iron Spider figure that came with the 2-pack Mark 50, the Endgame concept art War Machine, Endgame Valkyrie, and Ant-Man. Just want to give a shout out to Still Figuring Out. I actually got the idea to try the Tony Stark head sculpts on other Iron Man figures, in particular with the Mark 50 from him. Be sure to check out his channel, Still Figuring Out, and his Instagram as well. He's got great stuff, great content. So that's my review of the Infinity Saga Avengers Endgame 2-pack Iron Man Mark 85. I love the accessories. I think the sculpt and the improved paint apps on this figure are very beautiful. They could have tweaked the articulation a little bit to improve it. However, just seeing that beautiful Robert Downey Jr. Tony Stark head sculpt is more than enough to make me ignore the little imperfections. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of this figure. Let me know what you think of my review. Please leave a comment below. And if you like this video, hit that like button. And if you still haven't, hit that subscribe as well as the notification bell. You can also follow me on social media, links in the description below. And I'll see you guys in the next video.